Throughout the history of paleontology, there have been few debates as long-running and potentially heated as those involving the tyrant lizard king. Amongst this discourse, one debate stood above many in a class all its own. In the final days of the Mesozoic, did Tyrannosaurus reign over its North American domain alone as the last and greatest of the tyrannosaurs, or did another enigmatic heir to the tyrant reptile legacy stand short in its own way? Nanotyrannus was a name that once invited chaos and sparked division at the mere mention of it for decades, but it might now go down in history in a whole different way. So, how did we get to this point? A point at which, right before Halloween 2025, a seemingly long-buried genus of dinosaur came clawing its way out of its taxonomic grave. I know I've said countless times in my other videos that I don't really ever want to touch the Rex v Nano debate, but now is the perfect time to, considering what has been discovered. The most important and now publicly available specimens of Nanotyrannus are well known, with most now getting full scientific descriptions. Though I wouldn't doubt a full monographic treatment of Jane to be published someday, maybe even by or with the help of the North Carolina gang. That said, there are now well over a handful of known immature Tyrannosaur specimens from the Lance and Hell Creek formations. Most are privately owned, and therefore are scientifically useless until they become publicly available, a la the Montana dueling dinos. That said, they are so tantalizing that I found myself remiss not to list them out, tell you how complete they are, and show how they might be helpful for the understanding of Tyrannosaurus and Nanotyrannus. Those that are publicly available tend to suck though, consisting of singular pieces or a handful of unhelpful mush. But with all this preemptive mumbo-jumbo out of the way, let's begin. Let's see where the next stage in the Nano v Rex debate might take us. 1966 Jordan Theropod, LACM 28471. In the summer of 1966, LA paleontologist Harley Garbani was out on FS McKeever Ranch land in the Badlands of Garfield County, Montana, near the town of Jordan, when he stumbled upon the badly preserved remains of a theropod noggin eroding out of a dark gray clay chunk of the Hell Creek Formation. Once it was taken back to the LA County Museum, it would remain in the collections for over a decade before paleontologist Ralph Molnar got around to describing it. He found the specimen, which includes both maxillae or upper jaws, teeth, nasals, frontals, parietal, and portions of the syringular and lower jaws, to be too fragmentary to apply to a known or new genus and species. He simply called it the Jordan Theropod. Garbani and some people from the LA Museum thought the specimen was from a juvenile Tyrannosaurus before Molnar got around to describing it, so this is technically the first of such specimens to ever be attributed to an actual juvenile Tyrannosaurus. The Cleveland skull was found and described before this, obviously, but it was considered a new species of Albertosaurus. Molnar didn't think it was a juvenile Tyrannosaurus, and it has now been one of the handful of specimens of anomalous Hell Creek giant theropods embroiled in the Nano v Rex debate. These simple remains went through a bit of a taxonomic back and forth in the decades after its first publication, no doubt because there were basically no other nano or juvenile Rex specimens to work with. Gregory S. Paul took another look at it in the late 1980s, describing it as a new species of the very old genus Oblisodon, which had enjoyed renewed interest in the 80s and 90s, but had been originally created in the 1860s. He named it Oblisodon molnaris, and then Oblisodon molnari, and was then reassigned to an already existing species, Oblisodon mirandus, by Molnar and Kenneth Carpenter in 1989, before being uplifted to a unique genus by George Olszewski in 1995, Stygivenator molnari, meaning Molnar's river Styx hunter, which is pretty badass all things considered. This scrappy critter would be subsumed by Tyrannosaurus and exhumed out of the Tyrannosaurus genus and validated with its unique label over and over again until the 2025 Zano and Napoli paper. In the new research, they find that the anatomical traits preserved in the specimen are just too poor to actually definitively identify the specimen. They consider it a dubious theropod dinosaur, but didn't think there was enough evidence to consider it either Tyrannosaurus or Nanotyrannus. Additionally, they say that the 2024 work of Longridge and Saita, in which they considered the genus valid and different from Nanotyrannus in a list of traits they considered accurate, was wrong. Zano and Napoli argued that the issue was that they were basing the connection of Stygivenator and Nanotyrannus on the Jane specimen, which turned out to also be unique to other Nanotyrannus specimens, with Zano and Napoli naming it as a new species, Nanotyrannus lethaeus. 1997. Tinker. All the way back in 1997, commercial fossil hunter, excavator, and preparator Mark Eatman was out scoring some land in South Dakota for anything that could catch a good price. On this particular jaunt, he stumbled upon the remains of a medium-sized tyrannosaur that was quite exciting. The specimen, which alternatively goes by the name Tinker or Rocky, includes the premaxillae and maxillae bones, a partial nasal, the jugal, parietal, squamosal, both quadratojugals, a quadrate, palatine, pterygoid, a dentary or lower jaw, the splenial, coronoids, syringular, angular, prearticular, articulars, some teeth, 2 cervical ribs, 5 dorsal ribs, rib fragments, 20 partial tail vertebrae, 12 chevrons, partial scapulae and coracoids, or shoulder girdles, humeri, hand claws, incomplete ilia, pubes, and the ischium of the pelvis, a tibia, and a toe claw. The thing has been estimated to be around 30 feet in length, which is about 2/3 the size of an adult. This means this specimen may be the most complete and only definitive specimen of an older juvenile or young subadult ever found. It exhibits anatomy unlike that of any purported Nanotyrannus specimen and looks a heck of a lot more like an adult Tyrannosaurus. Unfortunately for the future of the Nano-Rex debate, this specimen is locked in a never-ending legal battle, and when it isn't, it keeps changing hands too. To make a very long story short, the legal rights to the fossil on the land was in question. The land on which Eatman found his specimen belonged to either some rancher named Gary Gilbert, or that land had been leased to Gilbert from the county. Eatman sold the excavation rights to the specimen to Ron Frithiof, a noted fossil hunter who reportedly only got into the field to make boatloads of cash after the auction of Sioux. Frithiof got a lease from the county for the fossils, with the county getting a 10% cut of the sale of said specimen. Frithiof's first target was the Indianapolis Children's Museum and tapped a price tag on Tinker of 8.5 million bones. The county wanted that chunk of change, so they started some legal BS with Frithiof, which eventually ended with Frithiof getting the specimen in 2009. However, Frithiof outsourced the job of preparation to someone else who happened to file for bankruptcy as the legal battle ended, so Tinker ended up in the possession of a federal bankruptcy court. The story after this period is a little murky. Someone fabricated a fossil and resin mount of the bones and then made molds of that mount to make and sell casts of the skeleton, while the real bones worked their way through whatever legal steps they needed to. This skeleton was very poorly reconstructed. As you can see, the skull doesn't look right. Regardless, casts of this thing have been sold to a bunch of places, like the Journey Museum in Rapid City and the Discovery Center of Idaho. The weird part is that at some point between 2009 and 2018, it was bought either by or for the Ultimatal Dinosaur Museum in Denkendorf, Germany. An article by Süddeutsche Zeitung seems to imply they had a hand in this, as they displayed the dinosaur in their headquarters. It's not really a big secret or anything, I just can't find a lot of direct information about it. At some point during the purchase, a new group of fossil preparators and fabricators were brought on to basically reconstruct the specimen, and they did one hell of a better job, with the bones now fitting together more accurately and with less cartoonish proportions. It was put on display at the museum and renamed Rocky. Sadly, seemingly no research has or is being done on this specimen. The museum seems like a privately run, for-profit type, so this may be one reason, though that hasn't stopped the Rocky Mountain Dinosaur Research Center in the US before. So hopefully someday we get to actually see a publication on this holy grail of a skeleton. 2001 SWAU HRS Zuri. In 2001, Zuri Franco discovered the remains of a tyrannosaur somewhere in the middle of nowhere, eastern Wyoming. The details are quite fuzzy as the specimen belongs to the Dinosaur Museum at the Southwestern Adventist University, an extremely religious Young Earth Creationist university. Despite what I just said, you wouldn't know it from a brief glance. They hide that particular side of them pretty well, but you can read between the lines if you've seen enough apologetics from that particular loony bin. Since I would rather dive deeper on this fossil in its own video, I will keep it brief. What they have is enough of the skull to basically create a full reconstruction. The only thing it's missing is the back of the head, the tip of the snout, and some of the main chunks from the back of the jaw. Longrich and Citus 2024 Nanotyrannus paper identified Zuri as a Nanotyrannus, though a thorough study of Zuri to prove this is likely not possible. Otherwise, it would have been done by now or included in the Zano and Napoli 2025 study. 2003 LACM 7509/150167 Thomas. Between 2003 and 2005, the LA County Museum were excavating a site in southeastern Montana because they had another tyrannosaur on their hands. The specimen is around 70% complete and has been estimated to be around 10 meters long and 17 years of age. LACM 7509, or Thomas, is on display at the LA Museum and is similar in size and age to Tinker. Interestingly, it does not seem to be included in the Zano and Napoli paper, so perhaps it will be included in analyses to get to the bottom of what an actual juvenile or subadult Tyrannosaurus looks like. Thomas exhibits a far more robust morphology than any Nanotyrannus specimen, and is only about 10 feet longer than Jane. 2006 Little Clint. All the way back in 2006, Thomas Carr and company found a dig site in southeastern Montana that contained just a few teeny bones that they think belong to a baby Tyrannosaurus much younger than any Nanotyrannus specimen. It's a frontal, a rib, and a toe bone. So yeah, not substantial, and not very conclusive, but still neat that it exists, right? 2013 Baby Bob. One of the more upsetting discoveries was Baby Bob, a small tyrannosaur discovered near Jordan, Montana in 2013 by fossil hunter Bob Dietrich. Bob and his brother Alan took all the fossils back to their setup to prepare and find a buyer. The weird part is that they loaned it to the museum at the University of Kansas for display and study, where it stayed for 2 years. Seemingly no work on Baby Bob was able to be completed because after 2 years, Dietrich reportedly said or thought, quote, "I did my fair share of giving," end quote. Which, I mean, that's pretty ruthless if you ask me. So he listed the thing on eBay for $2.95 million and listed the museum as involved with the sale. The museum does not sell fossils and forced Dietrich to leave their name out of it, and poor Baby Bob was taken off exhibit and sent back to Dietrich. The eBay sale never went through, and the specimen remains with Dietrich to this day, though there are rumors it may have an owner. The specimen is small and young enough that, if not a Nanotyrannus, it could be one of the best true juvenile tyrannosaurs. It's been estimated to be around 4 years old based on its size, but videos as recent as 2019 and 2020 show a cast reconstruction of the skull of the specimen still in possession of Dietrich. It's also not entirely clear how complete the specimen is, since there hasn't been any study of it. Much of the specimen seems to be skull pieces based on the photos of the real material. There are some limb bones as well. Alas, it is lost to science until it gets entered into a public institution. 2016 KUVP 156375. All the way back in 2016, David Burnham of the University of Kansas, as well as a huge team of volunteers from the university and its museum, discovered the remains of a small tyrannosaur in the Hell Creek Formation of Garfield County, Montana. The specimen, KUVP 156357, includes both maxillae, or upper jaws, with a lot of its teeth still in their sockets, plus a partial premaxilla, jugal, postorbital, vomer, an ectopterygoid, a neck and a back vertebra, some ribs, chevrons, and metatarsals 1, 4, and 5, and some toe bones and claws. Not great, but better than a single bone, and about as good as some of the other privately held specimens. This specimen is still being recovered and prepared, with the 2024 field season the last one needed to complete the excavation, so I would expect the specimen to appear in more literature within the next few years. Burnham and colleagues already published a preliminary report on the specimen back in 2018, so expect more on this one. 2019, Jodie/Chomper. If you thought the Montana dueling dinosaurs were the only thing that rancher/dino hunter Clayton Phipps was uncovering and selling off to whomever, then you'd be wrong. In 2019, Phipps and his team found another small tyrannosaur in Montana. This one is reportedly around 55% complete, with a 90% complete skull and is similar in size and anatomy to Jane, which we now know belongs to a species of the Nanotyrannus genus. The discovery and excavation of this specimen, which goes interchangeably by Jodie or Chomper, was documented on the Discovery Channel show Dino Hunters. I happened to do a sort of PSA-ish video about the Dino Hunters show a long time ago. I don't exactly hold the same strong views today as I did then, but the fact that these things still largely end up being sold to whomever, and considering how some of them actually are incredibly scientifically important, I still believe that allowing billionaires to take more from us is probably not a good thing. Based on images of the mounted skeleton, it looks to be just a little larger than Jane, which would line up with what Zano and Napoli estimated for a more mature Nanotyrannus lethaeus. 2009 to 2010, BHI 6439, Nicholas. Sometime between 2009 and 2010, Dr. Stephen Nicholas and a team from the Mid-American Paleontological Society were out in Montana doing some digging when they discovered another medium-sized tyrannosaur. Little is known of this specimen because it was sold to fossil collector Terry Boudreau as Dr. Nicholas was low on funds. That said, it seems as though it was likely prepared by the Black Hills Institute, as they made molds of the fossils and have casts of this specimen in their possession. The current whereabouts of the actual fossils is unknown. Casper. Not many specifics are known about this specimen. It's the skull and possible postcrania of a possibly 6 to 7-year-old tyrannosaur. It gets its name because it was found near Casper, Wyoming. It was prepared, reconstructed, and sold to a Danish collector. The skull was temporarily loaned to the Natural History Museum of Denmark to go along with Tristan Otto. While at the museum, researchers CT scanned the specimen, figuring out how much was real and how much was reconstructed. Turns out a lot of it was real, about 60%. An article about the scanning says it was worked on by a Canadian company, and that could be anyone, but I wouldn't doubt it was either Research Casting International or Dino Lab Inc. This one may be entirely lost to science, as it's definitively owned by some random elite. Maybe they will donate it at the time of death. More 6625, Chomper. Next up, we have another specimen named Chomper. We can thank the land before time for confusing nicknames. The specimen is very fragmentary, consisting of just some skull pieces. It was found by Lee Hall with the Museum of the Rockies, where it resides as specimen MOR 6625. Hopefully this specimen gets a full proper description someday. 2022, DMNS, t.rex. In the summer of 2022, 8-year-old Liam, 11-year-old Jessen, and their 10-year-old cousin Caden were wandering around the Badlands of Marmarth, North Dakota, looking for fossils when they stumbled upon some large, shiny brown bones eroding out of a rocky outcrop on some BLM land. The kids sent photos of their find to Denver Museum paleontologist and famed dino mummy finder Tyler Leeson, who confirmed what the kids had found was a dinosaur. Once Leeson got out there to Marmarth, serendipitously his hometown, he was able to confirm that what was found was a medium-sized dinosaur with some good portions of its body preserved. Excavation time. Over the course of 11 days, Leeson, the kids, and a crew from the Denver Museum of Nature and Science excavated, field prepared, jacketed, and removed the specimen. According to the press kit materials for this discovery, the t.rex excavation was a meticulous process. The overlying rock, or overburden, was first removed using a 70-pound jackhammer and picks and shovels. The crew then carefully excavated around the bones using specialized tools and techniques to ensure the fossil was not damaged. Once the fossil was field prepared, they reinforced it with wooden bracers and jacketed it before getting a helicopter to take it out to a trailer and take it back to the museum. It was only when the crew were actually chipping rock away from the fossils that they were able to give a tentative identification to it, a juvenile Tyrannosaurus. That made the find extra special. There are only about a handful of juvenile Tyrannosaurs in publicly available institutions, where they can be studied and restudied. It's still under analysis, but most of it has been fully prepared at this point. The entirety of what was preserved of the skull has been revealed. The rest of it will have to be observed with CT scans. They found the pelvis, a leg, and the skull. However, they found that they had collected more of its skull than initially thought when in the field, so I wouldn't be surprised if more of the skeleton was found as well. Plus, the Denver Museum crew keeps going out to the same area each summer, so they will likely keep finding more stuff. I can't wait for the publication on this specimen. It looks a lot more like an adult Tyrannosaurus than a Nanotyrannus, despite being similar in size to Bloody Mary and Jane. The never-ending saga of Nanotyrannus versus Tyrannosaurus is extensive and annoying, a perfect exemplar of the scientific method in action. From an endangered keystone find to ethical questions on research and discourse, and a library's worth of half-century-old papers, the discussion and debate on this animal will always spark interest. As an episode of Paleo World once put it, undoubtedly, the paleontologist of tomorrow will enjoy a few laughs at our expense. One thing that Zano and Napoli 2025 paper didn't discuss is the skin impressions. Bloody Mary reportedly has some amount of skin impressions on the legs, and maybe even preservation of internal organs. Here's an image of some of the skin from the foot. It may prove something interesting about the integument of these dinosaurs. New research will update the old, and what was unveiled in 2025 might just be the start to a brand new chapter in the understanding of both the tyrant lizard king and its tiny tyrant neighbors. For more interesting stories about nature, the history of life, or what goes bump in the night, subscribe, like this video, drop a comment in the comment section below, and hit the bell icon to stay in the know with everything Edge. Thanks for watching.